Hey everybody, it's GombletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today I'll be playing another Arena Cube draft of the January 2022 Cube. Without further ado, let's just get into it. I think Field of the Dead is one of the best cards in the entire Cube, being able to spit out an army of zombie tokens just uncounterably off of a land. It's just really good. It's resilient against board wipes because it's just a land, so if you top deck more lands later, you're still making more zombies. Can't be countered. Can't be removed easily. I guess now there is one red card that destroys lands in the cube. But generally, Field of the Dead is a really hard to interact with win condition. That's pretty fun to draft around and pretty good to draft around as well, because it's going to require taking a lot of non-basic lands highly, so your mana base is just going to be excellent for whatever kind of multicolor deck you're trying to do with Field of the Dead. So, going to be a pretty easy pick one, pack one for me there. Field of the Dead is just an absurd Magic card all around. So now in pick 2 here, we can take a Triumph to go with the Field of the Dead to just get some really good mana fixing for doing some multicolor nonsense. I feel like I do like to take the non-basic lands incredibly highly when I have the Field of the Dead, so that seems like not a bad decision at all here. We could also take Breeding Pool if we wanted. I think the Shock lands are pretty great. Being able to come to play untapped does make them generally a little bit better than the Triumphs unless you are like 5 colors. That being said, Field of the Dead decks can certainly try to go the 5-color route. As for the non-land cards here that are good, I like Scavenging Ooze a lot. Pretty flexible card. It's nice and cheap on your curve. Ranger of Eos is really fun with a lot of 1-mana creatures, but other than that, everything else here is pretty slow, but decent cards to try to draft and build around. I think I'm just on the Triome here. So pick 3. We now have some more non-basics, Scattered Groves and a Glacial Fortress. We have Escape to the Wilds, a massive card draw spell in green-red. The best color to work with Field of the Dead is going to be green, because green has the most cards that will pull lands out of your deck or allow you to play additional lands like Escape to the Wilds does. So we are mildly leaning towards green already, so Escape to the Wilds would be a pretty good pickup. And I think that's going to be my pick here. Not a huge fan of like Llanowar Elves in the Field of the Dead decks, because we're definitely taking cards like Cultivate highly that mana ramp our lands rather than on creatures. So I think Escape to the Wild seems pretty solid to me to go with that Field of the Dead. Although, as we saw in our last Arena Cube draft, you can certainly do a Field of the Dead deck that has no green in it. We had an Esper control deck with Field of the Dead, and it was still an absolute house. So, that being said, I think Escape to the Wild is just one of the best cards in the pack as well, so happy to lean into that here. Bunch of great non-basic lands here and not much competition. I like Fabled Passage a lot. It's like a better Evolving Wilds. It fixes us for whatever color we need by cracking it. It's also really good with Field of the Dead if we draw this late game when we have the 7 lands that we need to produce zombies. This will be 2 landfall triggers. That's going to be 2 zombie tokens. Pretty happy to take Field of the Dead there. I'm sorry, Fabled Passage there. Now, a green-black dual land. Vraska, Find and Finality. I think we're just slamming down the dual land again. Vraska's fine, Finality's fine, but we really need to make sure we've got tons of non-basics, and they seem to be drying up somewhat quickly here. Somebody might have drafted a Golos or something. So pick 6 now. Not a huge fan of Regrowth. I think there's better recursion in the cube. There are cards that'll bring things back from your graveyard to hand while doing other things. Blood Artist is quite good, but it's not going to be in a Field of the Dead deck. It's really good in Rakdos or just aggressive black decks with a lot of creatures. Not something Field of the Dead is really doing. Same with like Lightning Helix. Nothing great here to work with Field of the Dead, to be honest. We can take a black removal spell or like a Seagate Restoration. So we have that Seagate Reborn as another non-basic land. Yeah, maybe supposed to be Heartless Act here. We do have 2 black dual lands already. But I'm just going to take Seagate Reborn. Pick 7 now. Well, Hagra Mauling is nice. It's a removal spell and a non-basic land with a different name for Field of the Dead. Stonecoil Serpent is nice because whatever's going on with our mana base, we'll always be able to cast this for a decent rate. 2 mana 2/2, 3 mana 3/3, so on and so forth. Old Rutstein's interesting if you try to build a self-mill deck. It's going to require a lot of work to really make it tick. Toski's great in a creature-heavy deck. We're certainly not that right now. I'm just going to take Haggard Mauling. Now, really nothing. A bunch of aggressive cards here, generally. Dragonkin, Berserker, Scrap Heap, Scrounger, Venerated, Loxodon, Dauntless, Bodyguard. All of those are exceptionally aggressive cards. You know, if all of the aggro in the world is open, probably prefer to be in red over anything else. And this is also the one that's going to be the best in even a non-aggressive deck, because once we have the 5 mana, just chump attack with this and make a 5/5 flyer. Not horrible. Alright, but yeah, aggressive stuff is wide open, and non-basic lands are not coming around whatsoever here. We have Rimrock Knight and Battlecry Goblin. I like both of these a lot. Battlecry Goblin is great because it functions as a 2-mana 2/2, but it also functions as a 4-mana 3/2 haste, or a 6-mana 4/2 haste. Like, it ramps up as the game progresses, and it could potentially spit out a little army with more goblins coming out, and it can buff those up. I like Battlecry Goblin a whole bunch for red aggro, and I like Viashino Pyromancer for red aggro, and none of this for Field of the Dead. Young Pyro still in here is wild, but Mayhem Devil and Priest of Forgotten Gods for a Rakdos sack deck. That being said, with red aggression as open as it is, if you can pull off a mono red aggro deck, that's one of the scariest things in the whole cube. That is a deck I have been consistently losing to even in my 7-win runs, so I'm going to take just the mono red card over the black aggressive card there. Now we'll go ahead and take another non-basic if we do keep going down the Field of the Dead path, but it's looking like that is not particularly open, whereas mono red or just aggressive stuff in general maybe. And yeah, here we are picking up just some more decent red pickups with a last pick Goblin Ruin Blaster. Very good against the Field of the Dead kind of decks. Really nice 4-drop for the aggro stuff, but now we have Golos and Field of the Dead. This is a draft and a half. The Arena Cube is really going to test me here. We know mono red is pretty solidly open. We picked up all of this in the second half of the first pack, but we could have Field of the Dead and Golos in the same deck, which is always absurd. That is the 1-2 punch best 2-card combo you can pick up in the whole cube. This is going to be a really skill-testing draft here. For now, I'm going to take the Golos, because this isn't a particularly skill-testing pick, because of the fact that the only thing for mono red is like a Grim Initiate, which doesn't really matter. But as these picks progress and we see a great red card or a great card for the Golos deck, I have no idea what I'm going to do. So here we go. Glorybringer is going to be great in mono red. And it would also be solid in the Golos deck, so I think Glorybringer is definitely the pick here. That lets us hedge our bets while still getting a card that's exceptional in either deck. Whereas we could take Forsaken Crossroads as another Evolving Wild style card for the Field of the Dead Golos deck. It would only get played in that deck. I'm going to take the Glorybringer here. Now we have Skewer the Critics and Toralf's Disciple for mono red. And for Golos, we have Crag Crown Pathway will be great, because we're going to have a lot of red in the Golos deck, because we have so much for mono red potentially. So the red duels are going to be high picks for us. I don't want to like say anything or commit to anything here. This is insane. The choices we're presented with here. I think I'm just going to take Toralf's Disciple and just go for it for mono red here. I think it's a little better than Skewer the Critics, but not by a lot. And unfortunately there are no red cards now in pick 4. Oh no. There's also nothing really to work with Golos. I mean, there's one non-basic land, but it's just a monocolored one. It's not a dual land. Tovolar's Huntmaster is one of the strongest cards in the pack, so that would be nice to dump out turn 6 with Golos. Plus, it would work if we end up in a weird little, like, Gruul deck in the in-between. I think I like Tovolar's Huntmaster here. Okay, good. We're seeing great mono red stuff again. Beaumont Courier and Fight with Fire. I like the Bomat Courier, one of the best 1-drops in the whole cube, and we don't have any 1-mana creatures yet. Something that is really nice to pick up with mono red. I'm going to take Bomat Courier. Alright, cool. Now we get to take Soul Scar Mage, which turns any of our damage-based removal spells into -1/-1 counters to give a permanent debuff on anything we're targeting. Although Kolaghan's Command is a pretty sweet card if we go Rakdos. But I'm just going to take the mono red stuff. I think I'm doing everything I can to commit to mono red. We still have a really awkward backup plan of a very red-heavy Golos deck. But ideally, we push ourselves into mono red here. Alright, Literal Lightning Bolt. Literal Lightning Bolt pick 7. I'm pretty confident now we can pull off the mono red pivot. And that pack earlier just didn't have a lot of red in it in the first place. Oh yeah, Experimental Frenzy and Lava Coil here. I'm very happy to see that it turns out that the read that red was going around quite late in the first pack did end up being accurate enough for a pivot to mono red here. And I'm taking Experimental Frenzy because it's a huge card draw engine in the late game. For the mono red deck, this just is the top end of your curve, and then all of a sudden you're casting through your deck really quickly. Any non-lands you have on top of your library, you just cast them all in one chain. Grim Initiate wheeled all the way through, and it was the only red card in this pack. There were no red cards in this pack in the first place. There are no red cards yet again. I guess we have a tiny bit of Rakdos, or a tiny bit of Gruul. I don't know, I'll take Cursebound Witch. That's good in Rakdos Sacrifice because it has a good death ability that could pull out a sacrifice card. We wheel the Skewer the Critics here. All the mono red stuff going nice and late. You'll love to see it. I don't think any of these are even really good in Rakdos, but like maybe Graveyard Trespasser. Take a black-red duel for Rakdos. Dollhouse of Horrors just seems like a way weaker Godfarrow's Gift. It is cheaper, but still not into it. There's Kolaghan's Command for Rakdos, or even Reassembling Skeleton, but Kolaghan's Command is just for Rakdos aggro, whereas Skeleton, specifically Rakdos Sack, all of our red cards are just generic aggressive stuff. So I prefer the Rakdos card that could just be aggro. And here we are with the best red card in the cube, Embercleave, get on in here. Earthshaker Kenra is one of my favorite red cards in the cube as well. I think it's also exceptional, to the point where I don't even know if we'll wheel it, as open as red has seemed to be. But I'm hopeful. I've got my fingers crossed. I'm definitely slamming down Embercleave. We can't miss out on the Embercleave. The strongest red cards on the entirety of Arena. We have Mecha Godzilla, which is a nice 3-drop. Just easily going to be the biggest threat on the board at 3 mana. Pretty random card, but pretty fun and always threatening. Because I don't love Burn Down the House in just like mono red, because the best part of this is you can just blow everything up. Creating like 3 Hasty Devils that deal damage when they die is fine for 5 mana, a little bit below the curve. And then like Crashstone and Bloodbane Marauder are both very unexciting to me. I think I just want to take, another 3-drop creature here. Grab a Mecha Godzilla. Ooh, a Nax is exceptional in mono red. Your devotion to red is going to be quite high, so this is going to be quite large, and you're going to be spitting out a lot of Satyr tokens as your stuff dies. Love that. Chandra's also great for mono red if we have a lot of burn spells, but we don't have a ton right now. We have Lightning Bolt and Skewer the Critics, both great to recast off Chandra, but not a high count there. Direfleet Daredevil's really nice as well. 2 mana for a 2/1 first striker, so you can just play it on curve to get aggressive. But if you top deck at late game, you get to cast one of your opponent's instants or sorceries against them, which is pretty spicy. But Anax is definitely the best of those. Now we have Dragon's Rage Channeler or Judith. Judith buffs your whole field for an additional power and damages your opponent as your stuff dies, and if we do end up playing black, we have access to the Kolaghan's Command as well, and we do have a Dragon Skull Summit, and a Fabled Passage, and a creature land in black. Dragon's Rage Channeler's solid, but we don't have a lot of non-creature stuff in here, especially if we're not playing black, so we're not hitting the Delirium often. Mildly speculative here. I'm still going to try to be mono red, but I don't actually think that the little 2/1 card there is going to be that good, or the 1 mana 1/1 is going to be that good, the Dragon Rage Channeler. Usually it's a great card, but we just don't have as many instants and sorceries as we would like. Obosh here, double our damage on all our odd costs, so our 1s, 3s, and 5s. We've got a decent amount of those. Could also take Crawling Barrens to have a man land, a creature land. There's also Kazul's Fury for a land or a fling, that's nice, but this tends to go insanely late. I think I'm just going to take Obosh. And that can get played in mono red or Rakdos. Now we have Scorch Spitter for a nice aggressive 1-drop, Ferocidon to shut off any life gain and deal extra damage to our opponents. And it has Menace, or a great 5-drop, spitting out a 4/4 flyer. All of this stuff is sweet. I think I'm on Ferocidon. I really like shutting off life gain. Just puts a ton of pressure on your opponent. It's hard to block, shuts off any life gain, and damages them as they try to play blockers. We do see a Godpharaoh's Gift. Pretty expensive, but super impactful. I feel like it's a little too expensive for mono red. I'd rather just have a Thundering Rebuke here, especially when we have like Young Pyromancer and Soulscar Mage here. They're just looking for more damage-based red spells. Just more red instants and sorceries to really function at peak performance. So let's get the instants and sorceries to really make them shine, and now we get to take a Devil's Play to help them out as well. And we wheel the Earthshaker Kenra. Super happy about that one. Fantastic aggressive creature. Crash Through or Bloodbraid Marauder. Really just don't love Bloodbraid Marauder, but we've got enough 1-drops. We will cascade into something if we draw this late game, so I guess probably better than Crash Through here. I don't think we have enough instant sorcery synergies to work with that. Judith only triggers off non-token creatures, so we don't damage our opponent when the elementals from Chandra die. Chandra's still better than Direfleet Daredevil, probably because the recasting stuff, yeah.
I'm happy as a hellion to start some fires.
And we wheel Dragon's Rage Channeler. Alright, well, get in. And Kazul's Fury or Crawling Barrens. Take Actually super hard. I think I'm going to take Crawling Barrens. Because if we go mono red, just having a creature land is going to be fantastic, and there's going to be no cost to that. Ember Shieldbreaker is fine for main deckable artifact hate. But it's kind of slow. Just a 2-mana 2/1 with no abilities in most matchups. So I'm just going to stick to the very fast, basically 1-mana 2/1. Alright. Could be an interesting deck to build here. Definitely not trying to use Obosh as the companion. I think we are trying to do mono red. So we have absolutely no mana issues whatsoever. This Embercleave to just dump out real early. And I'm not going to play Fabled Passage just to thin the deck, because running a comes into play tapped land is actually going to be a huge downside for this sort of deck. Do I like having the 1 of Godpharaoh's Gift, or is that just too much mana? Just too much commitment. Like Deemworthy we can cycle on 4. Devil's Play we can play early. Embercleave's always going to get played for 4 or less mana. So if we cut Godpharaoh's Gift, our curve stops at 5 and we start cutting more lands here to get really spicy, because even like Skewer the Critics is basically a 1-drop. Ruin Blaster's a 4 though. We do have Dragonkin Berserker wanting 5 mana, and we have Earthshaker Kenner wanting 6 mana later. But I think we want to keep that curve real low. I'm going to go to like 15 lands maximum here, I think. Deemworthy is pretty slow for mono red. It's pretty good value, but it's just so slow. Yeah, we can cut Deemworthy Godpharaoh's Gift, and then we need to cut 1 more card. And then we are just full speed ahead. The super fast, just blisteringly fast red deck here. 19 creatures, 7 non-creatures. Grim Initiate's probably one of the weakest cards here. Not a ton to trigger our Dragon's Rage Channeler well. Or even the Soulscar Mage, but it's a little more impressive at just base stats. Magmatic Channeler's a little bit slow, but it gives us some card draw that we might desperately need later on. Mecha Godzilla's a little bit slow and it doesn't trigger an axe well. Yeah, one of these 4 cards I think is the cut here. I think I'm just going to go with Grim Initiate. Just seems super filler to me. And then I think here is the deck. Just mono red, super aggressive stuff. We're going to put on our fancy lands here. Oops. All right. There's the deck. Super good mono red aggro deck here. The hard pivot pack 1 out of the Golos field deck. Just because red was so wildly open, and this looks like as solid a mono red deck as I've ever seen. Literally the only card that I can think of that we're really missing. The biggest general problem with this deck that's keeping it from like a 10 out of 10 is our lack of just good, efficient burn spells. We have Lightning Bolt, Skewer the Critics, Thundering Rebuke, and Devil's Play. That's fine. That's solid. But I would like a few more, like Play with Fire and Shock kind of things. Maybe a Lightning Spear. Other than that, the only specific card that I can think of that we're like missing here for like the mono red deck is Torburn. We just didn't see Torburn. That was probably picked up by somebody else pack 1. But no, other than that, it feels like we have all the spice. We've got Lightning Bolt and Skewer. We have Embercleave and a Nax. Rampaging Ferocidon, Young Pyromancer, Earthshaker Kenra, Dragonkin Berserker, Battlecry Goblin, Glorybringer. Seems like a sick deck. And we'll see how it plays. But I'm very excited about this one, especially after as wild of a draft as that. Alright, here we are, game 1. Loving this hand. We've got a nice Lightning Bolt immediately, an Earthshaker Kenra to drop turn 2, and Experimental Frenzy later on to make sure that we are casting through our library real quickly. And the top deck turn 1 was incredible. Beaumont Courier, so we've just got a turn 1 creature to play to haste in and get some quick damage in. There's a Baral, Chief of Compliance from our opponent. We're going to Earthshaker Kenra that this turn so it can't block, and Lightning Bolt it next turn, so it's forever gone. And our opponent probably has Pact of Negation in hand here, because they were holding there. One of those little quirks of Arena that's a little bit annoying to a paper purist or somebody who's been playing since like 2009, like I have. Usually it would just be like, alright, yeah, you do that, you attack, whatever. But the fact that it stops there is like, okay, they have a 0 mana card in hand. Because they're not just going to full control just to bluff things in just a casual Arena Cube draft here. So we draw Chandra to be able to recast this Lightning Bolt later. That's awesome. For now, we're just going to cast it. Get this Baral out of the way. They could have a 2-mana counterspell now, like Negate, because they do have a blue mana up from Midnight Clock. So we'll find out if that's what they want to do here. Right, but they don't have the mana to pay for a Pact of Negation yet, so that's not an option. Attack everybody. Hit for 3, they're down to 13. Our Beaumont Courier is now at the point where we can discard our hand to draw 3 face-down cards with it. So as soon as we cast all this, it's going to be great. Pass turn all of their mana up. So they don't have the mana to pact something, but because they have all their mana up, they just have the mana for whatever kind of counterspell anyway. Experimental Frenzy, in my opinion, is actually just the bigger threat than Chandra. So I'm just going to cast Chandra pre-combat here. If they don't counter Chandra, we're spitting out some elemental tokens and hitting them, and if they do counter Chandra, one less counterspell, one Yeah, one less counterspell they could have for the bigger threats, Experimental Frenzy or Obosh. Alright, no counterspell. So this is still a pretty solid play because we are getting more damage in here. Yeah, we're going to keep that Bolt Engrave.
Don't worry, I brought company.
Plus, there's no reason, like, we don't need an Experimental Frenzy on the board until we're out of cards to play in hand. So we'll definitely go for the Obosh next turn. I think Obosh might even present lethal, because it ups Beaumont Courier's damage to, let's see, double. It's be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, it's not quite lethal, but it's close. If we had 6 mana, it would be lethal, because then we're recasting a Lightning Bolt as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Glorybringer does present immediate lethal, so we'll just go for that. They didn't have a counterspell last turn. We'll see if they have one this time. But if they again don't have the counterspell, that's just lethal on board. Maybe they have an unsummon for the Glorybringer. Something like that. They're on mono blue so far, so we're not worried about the Settle the Wreckage or anything. Shark Typhoon for a blocker to chump block the Glorybringer. Take 5 and go to 3 life. Recasting a Lightning Bolt off of Chandra next turn would be lethal. A whole ton of things would be lethal. They could trade with Earthshaker Kenra and go to 1 life. That is an option as well. Now it's probably just better to use Chandra's ability to make elemental tokens than it is to use the Lightning Bolt. Just a single elemental token hitting them would be lethal. Alright, and there's the concession from our opponent. That is a round 1 victory for Mono Red. Really great curve here. Dragon's Rage Channeler into Young Pyromancer into Mecha Godzilla. Then we can just Embercleave something later. Opponent starts with Isolated Chapel, turn 1 for white and black mana. Into an island. They're on blue, white, and black at least, and a Cold Steel Heart for white. Gotta be a little worried about a Wrath here. These super aggressive kind of red decks aren't the most flexible decks in the world. We don't really have a great way to try to play around a Wrath. We kind of are just supposed to dump our hand for now. Could have Settle the Wreckage here. They have double white up thanks to the Cold Steel Heart in the Chapel. They don't do it yet. We'll go ahead and Mecha Godzilla. Now I think I'm just going to go for an Embercleave next turn. Maybe not. They choose to counter Mechagodzilla and draw a card, which would imply they don't have a Wrath this turn at least. If they could get a 3-for-1 Wrath off here, I think they would just do it. Here's a Hard Evidence, a 0-3 on the ground, and they get to investigate, get a clue token they can use to draw a card. You know, luckily at the bare minimum, we have Crawling Barrens to play around a Wrath. We'll have a creature left. I don't think Embercleaving here is going to be the best thing ever now. We'll just use it to kill a crab and get in for a tiny bit more damage. We'd rather just play Dragonkin Berserker this turn, so next turn we could boast out a dragon if they don't deal with it. Berserker resolves, but it may be drawing removal in the end step here. Memory Deluge. They're going to look at the top 4 cards of the library, put 2 of them into their hand, and the rest on the bottom. Just a pass turn here. Feeling more and more like a settle. But that would be fine because we'd still have a 5/5 flyer on the board after that. Get a bunch of mana. Attack all. There's the settle. We get a flyer. And pull out some lands, which means our land count's going to be real low here. So if we draw something like Experimental Frenzy, it's really going to go off. Yeah, there's 6 lands left in these 25 now. Ooh, a Devil's Play if they ever tap out to try to finish them off with. Pretty huge. So we have 9 mana. We have enough to cast Obosh and level up our Crawling Barrens once, or we can just go for an Embercleave. They let that pass by real fast. If I go for an Embercleave here, though, I'm not playing an Obosh. But I'm also putting them to just dead to Devil's Play. This is a great bluff from our opponent if they have nothing. Oh, they might just have a counter spell. If they have no removal, this is a great bluff. Or, I'm sorry, if they do have removal, it's a great bluff. If they just had a counter spell, then yeah, they had a counter spell. But if they had a removal spell and chose not to do it when 5 was declared at their face, they're like, yeah, I'll take 5. Like, if I had just clicked the OK button, we would have just hit for 5 there. But looks like we are still hitting for 5, so it wasn't removal most likely. But that means we don't get to Obosh here. We do get to level up our Crawling Barrens. There's the removal for the flyer. Bubble Snare will keep it tapped down. Level up the Crawling Barrens. Beaumont Courier's the draw. That's actually a pretty threatening card because it allows us to refill our hand here if it gets to get some attacks off. Play this Obosh. The Courier hits for 2, which still just gets blocked by the Crab. I could instead just activate Barrens and attack with a 4/4. Can't get blocked by the Crab well, but also they could kill that with a removal spell. Lower our Devil's Play. I think I'm attacking with Beaumont Courier and just playing a post-combat Obosh. I don't want our land to get shot by a removal spell. Alright, we've got another counterspell out of the way. Makes Devil's Play more likely to resolve. Siphon Insight to take our Obosh, I guess? Sure. Cycle a Censor, because we have 1,000,000 mana now, so they can't counter something for the 1 mana tax that Censor provides. Magmatic Channeler is pretty good. Now is going to be one of the few times they're basically tapped out of counter magic. If I want to just try to Devil's Play them. Still have 2 mana up. But my Devil's Play would only do 8 damage, so it wouldn't be lethal anyway. They also might be tapped out of removal mana here. Now let's attack with these 2. See how they want to block. They are going to chump Crawling Baron, so we don't have to buff it right now. So I think we just let that happen. If they didn't block, I think I would just buff it again. They do have Into the Royal for Beaumont Courier to put it back into our hand. That means those cards are exiled permanently. But if I sacrifice it, I'm discarding these 2. And I don't think that I want to do that. Sure, I could flashback Devil's Play, but still... Yeah, we're going to let that happen. Recast the Courier and the Channeler here. Supreme Will as a draw spell. Tap out for the Siphon Insight. That means Devil's Play does it. Exact lethal. We hit for 2 with these 2 creatures, and Devil's Play hits for the final 8. Or 9 instead, but Crawling Barons also does it because we double buff. I guess just in case of Pact of Negation, it's better to just double buff the Crawling Barons. And there's the concession from our opponent. That is 2-0 now for Mono Red. Alright, here we are in round 3. This hand's very awkward. We really need to draw the cheap creatures to be able to do the Embercleave stuff. I really don't want to mulligan this, but I feel like I kind of have to. Like, I'm just obligated to, because if we don't hit exactly just like cheap creatures, if we hit a bunch of lands, what are we doing? Like nothing till like turn 4. Take the mull there. Alright, this is a way better curve. With a Glorybringer in hand, I like keeping as much mana as possible. Make it more likely to hit that on turn 5. So Soulscar into Enax into Glorybringer is the plan. Dread Wanderer starts things from our opponent. We even draw a 2-drop to curve out even better. Absolutely love it. Dread Wanderer can come back from their graveyard when they only have 1 card in hand. Skyclave Shade can't block, but can come back from the graveyard. So not a super great blocker on the defensive. We hit the 3rd land to help get to Glorybringer. Now, even if Soulscar Maid trades into the Wanderer, we get a 1/1 back out of it. So we're going to just attack all here. Definitely no blocks here. And the Shade can be recast from their graveyard anytime they had a land enter the battlefield. There's Mikaeus as a 2/2. Well, Mikaeus can't do anything about our board here, so we just attack in. Mikaeus can block our 1/1. Maybe we do Bolt Mikaeus. Yeah, we probably do. Bolt Mikaeus to get the 1/1 in. We have a Glorybringer coming up as another removal spell if we need to kill something else. Callous Blood Mage, a 2/1 that comes with a 1/1 Pest token, gives them a lot of blockers here. Ooh, they choose to draw the card though. Still one decent blocker. I mean, I guess it just trades for our 1/1, it's not that good of a blocker. Hit for 5, they are down to 5. One land pretty much seals the deal with Glorybringer or Obosh here. Ooh, but Sky Sovereign's a sick draw here. Kills one of our creatures when it enters the battlefield, kills the other one when it attacks, and they have exactly enough power to crew it and block with a 6/5. If we play Obosh, then Anax is big enough to trade it into Sky Sovereign, and the block is forced. If we play Glorybringer and I exert to kill Skyclave Shade, they then crew Sky Sovereign, block Glorybringer, and kill it without us losing a creature. Or without them losing a creature, so we have to play Obosh here. Because Obosh doubles Anax's damage. So Anax is lethal to them, or trades into Sky Sovereign, which means we attack both, they trade with Anax and take 1. And then we have multiple Satyrs out of Anax as well. And we still have the Glorybringer around to cast next turn to haste out. Yeah, Glorybringer would have been very bad there. Because the way the timing works, they don't have to crew it until after we've already declared whether or not we're going to exert. And now they only have 1 mana up to stop our Glorybringer, and that will hopefully not be enough. We've got a Gonti out on the ground, but that's a single ground blocker, which means they're taking 3 on the ground as well. Actually, we can even kill that with Glorybringer. Yep, Glorybringer should definitely seal the deal. There's the concession from our opponent. I believe we are now 3-0 with mono red. Round 4 here, one of the slower hands that we've had, but not as slow as the last hand that we mulliganed. I think this one is good enough to keep this time. Really close, but we can Mecha Godzilla turn 3. So at least we're starting on turn 3. That is still much slower than we would like to be in mono red, but I don't think slow enough to mulligan. Our opponent's on green-blue here, and we see them foretell a card. Turn 3, get a 1/1 token from Lovestruck Beast. I like getting a menace creature out then, because we're going to have a hard time killing a 5/5. But we can kill the 1/1 and then attack around the 5/5 with menace. Although here comes a counterspell, saw it coming. And there's the Lovestruck Beast. So we can stop them from attacking here just to be safe. Play the long game, weirdly enough. I think that's what we're supposed to do. We have a creature in our grave, we'll have a sorcery in our grave once we Devil's Play, or Skewer the Critics, whichever's better. Probably Skewer. And then we might even put a land in grave off Dragon's Rage Channeler to be pretty close to Delirium. Although this land lets us play Glorybringer. But we still have other things to cast here, and Glorybringer doesn't help that much. I mean, it lets us start attacking them, which is pretty big. Yeah, even if I throw this in grave, Dragon's Rage Channeler still needs another card type to get Delirium. So it's probably not worth it to get rid of the guaranteed Glorybringer turn 5. So like, sure, Glorybringer doesn't get to kill anything by exerting, but it still hits for 4 a turn. And now it does. Now it is going to execute Volo. Sorry, fans of Volo's Guide to Monsters. That is not allowed on this board. Just goes off if they cast any other creatures. They're going to be duplicating them, so all of their spells are just massive 2-for-1s. Cannot let that happen. Alright, we have a 6th mana. Pretty good for Devil's Play. We could just blow up Lovestruck Beast with it, but I feel like I would rather try to get flyers down. And they just have a bunch of counter mana up. And a Crawling Barrens that's going to be pretty scary. I think I just want to play Mechagodzilla, see if we can get Menace or Flying or anything like that sometime soon here. That resolves. I guess we get to go for Chandra 2, because we have the mana for it. That puts Dragon's Rage Channeler very close to Delirium, because now we do have the land engrave.
Better than having a plan.
And we can go ahead and hit for 1 damage here. Unless they are planning on dumping their mana into Crawling Barrens. If they're planning on dumping mana into Crawling Barrens, we just hit for 0, which is just the same as if... we didn't use the Chandra ability. At least it makes sure we know their mana's tied into this and they're not casting a big draw spell or anything. Alright, so we hit for 0. Fair enough. Maybe it would have been better to just +1 Chandra there, with her 0 to add a loyalty counter to each red planeswalker. Alright, Cold Steel Heart from our opponent. Taps down the Crawling Barrens. And then Thassa. They can flicker one of their creatures each turn, but they don't have any creatures with enter the battlefield effects. So Thassa doesn't affect the board in any way here. Now I genuinely do think it's going to be more damage to Devil's Play their Lovestruck Beast than it would be to Devil's Play their Face, because it's 4 damage this turn, plus more in the future. Magmatic Channeler, it's a fine draw, but not great. I'm going to get rid of it.
Say hi to my fiery friends.
Yeah, they're down to 5 now, and we still have a Devil's Play, it's just more expensive. So we have Viashino Pyromancer and then use Chandra to Skewer to close out this game. We don't even have to attack in to do that. Prophetic Titan with Thassa is pretty great, but if they don't kill Chandra, they are still just dead. Alright, they choose to kill the Mechagodzilla, so we just go for the Chandra combo for lethal. And there's the concession from our opponent. And I totally forgot that was an artifact, so we already had a flyer out, so we didn't even need to Skewer. Because then our Dragon's Rage Channeler was active as a 3/3 flyer. So yeah, Mechagodzilla being an artifact actually came in clutch there too, for even more damage there. That is 4-0 now. Delirium is an interesting mechanic, because it's one of those mechanics like Coven that has just made me really realize I cannot count to 4 for the life of me. Alright, the mirror match is here. Bomat Courier is very bad against 1/2s, but we're going to play Earthshaker Kenner turn 2, at least get 1 attack off with it. I think I'd still rather play Courier than Scorch Spitter. Grim Lavamancer, that's going to be really good in the mirror match. That's a very threatening card to me, because as they cast spells and get cards in their graveyard, they get to start using that to shred our board. All of our small stuff just dies to 2 damage really easily, really quickly. So Grim Lavamancer is very scary for the mirror match. Attack all, pass turn. Alright, Toralf's Disciple or Anax. Toralf's Disciple is going to be just more damage more quickly. Go for that. Shove our deck full of lightning bolts. That's what we're going to want to close out the game. Fourth mana from our opponent, Rekindling Phoenix. Alright, sure. We have 4 mana now to do Experimental Frenzy, but also Anax plus Scorch Spitter. Definitely Anax here. Even if we trade into the Rekindling Phoenix, it comes back onto the board, so they probably take that trade there, take 3. I would assume that's their game plan. We get Satyr tokens out of this exchange. I think it's worth it to just attack all here. Let them kill Toralf's Disciple to crack in for more damage and make it more possible to find lethal next turn. They're going to choose to block Bomat Courier and take 5. So they can stop us from potentially drawing all those cards, which could be lightning bolts from the Disciple. Yeah, that's fair enough. I like our cards in hand, and we're going to play Scourge Spitter next turn, so we're going to let that all resolve. We're definitely going to Scorch Spitter and possibly Obosh next turn if we hit a land. They're 2 lightning bolts away from death, and we have 2 playsets in the deck now. We do have to worry about our own life total as well, but if they want to attack us with Rekindling Phoenix, they are getting rid of their best blocker by far. And they're at 6 life, so that'll be a hard sell. If they have cheap removal, they can go like Shock, Lightning Bolt, and Grim Lavamancer's ability, and that would be a very big swing. Ooh, Glorybringer's the play. Use that as a removal spell here. Luckily, it doesn't give them any more blockers, so that's just like a one-off removal here. I think Obosh would be lethal if we hit Obosh, because we have a lot of attackers here and they're at 6. We do hit Obosh. Is Obosh lethal? They block our 3 biggest creatures, which are going to be our odd creatures. So they block 1-2 damage there, block 3 damage there, block 2 damage there. They take 1-2-3 plus 4-5 from Scorched Spitter's ability. It's incredibly close to lethal, but not quite. And it forces them to lose Grim Lavamancer. Doesn't force them to lose Lava Runner, I think. So Obosh is huge, but not quite lethal. And now we have 12 lightning bolts in our deck. Every lightning bolt is immediate lethal. Yeah, they go to 1 life. And we have 12 lightning bolts. We actually have 13 lightning bolts because we also have our original copy in our deck as well. And if we hit a land, Earthshaker counter is lethal. And they have to deal with our current board state to not die. So they have to kill us right now, is what I would assume here. That's their most likely out, would just be find lethal. Active Treason Lightning Bolt, but I don't think Active Treason's in the cube anymore. Siege King Commander, okay. That's defenses right there, but there's one of the 13 Lightning Bolts, and that's going to be game. And the Lightning Bolts are all 6 damage when you have an Obosh out. Good lord. Obosh says, you know, Lightning Bolt's not strong enough. If we want to balance Lightning Bolt to be as powerful as Ancestral Recall is, and the whole cycle of 1 mana instants for 1 mana of a color, it's got to be 1 mana, 6 damage. Good lord. Here we are now in round 6. Undefeated thus far, and this hand is quite good. Not be surprised if this can keep that record up. Very aggressive hand, all 1 and 2 mana creatures. Opponent starts with the Plains into Esper Sentinel. So they have cheap creatures as well. Go ahead and play an Earthshaker counter to shut off the block. Attack for 3 this turn. White and black from our opponent, and Jadar, Ghoul Color of Nephalia, is just a 1/1 on blocks, and the Decayed Zombie token can't block at all either. And our Rampaging Ferocidon's incredibly good against Jadar, because they're just going to take more damage the more our creatures, the more creatures they play. I think I really like putting Ferocidon on this board, so I'm just going to attack with these, let whatever trades happen, because Earthshaker Counter can come back. Bomat Courier is a little bit sad to lose that, but I still like pressuring in for more damage here. And now Ferocidon is going to be sweet. But if they play it smart, I think they just don't attack with the Decayed tokens. Because I think it's just a net gain for us. If we lose 2 life, but they lose 1, I think we're just like that much more aggressive than your average deck that it would be better for them to just not use Jadar. Just keep the Decayed Zombies just sitting there for now. Ooh. Although if they go for some sacrifice synergies, now it might be worth it to them. But it would be painful still. Ooh, Devil's Play is the draw. We can kill Woestrider here. But I don't really want to. Although, if I kill Woestrider, they can't block Ferocidon well. Yeah, they can't they can't kill Ferocodon on a block if I kill Wolf Strider. I think I will go ahead and do that. Go ahead and sack the goat to scry 1. Scry it to the bottom. Sack the decayed zombie to scry 1. So now I'm just going to attack with Ferocodon, because if I attack with Kenra, it probably trades with Jadar at this point, because they're going to see that we're stuck on 3 mana, so it'll be a while before Kenra comes back. So if I attack with Kenra, we're getting no more damage in, and we're losing Kenra. But if I don't attack with Kenra, then we're actually getting 1 more damage in, because Jadar has to produce a decayed zombie here. So it's actually just more damage not to attack with Kenra there. For now. Lurrus of the Dream Den. Well, I really want to kill that. Although we're shutting off the lifelink already, but shutting off their ability to recast stuff is going to be good here, even if they do gain blockers every time they do so. Can't play any hasters here to go wild with Embercleave. Embercleave's just uncastable currently. So, should play Soulscar Mage, Viashino Pyromancer, put them really low here. Yeah, actually, I like Scorch Spitter Pyromancer, because both of these are going to damage them without even having to get through. And then next turn we have plenty of creatures on board to cast Embercleave and find lethal. So I think the only thing I'm worried about now would be if they can find removal to get Rampaging Ferocodon off the board, because then Lurrus would be able to gain life again. It's about their only out here. Is to gain some life, and it looks like they don't have an out there, so 6-0. Here we are now in round 7, what very well may be the final boss. If we win this game, we are undefeated the whole draft, but no pressure if we lose this game. We've got a couple more tries to get maximum rewards, and no matter what happens, we are breaking even. We're actually up a little bit in value, which is quite nice. So turn 2 here, what do we want to do against an Incubation Druid? Just play like a Marauder, wait to shut off a blocker until I need to. I really don't need to shut off a 0-2 as a blocker, so I can just play Marauder for now. Play a little 3-1 to get in there. Playing against green-white here, they can certainly make quite a board of creatures quite quickly, and Esca's Chariot's going to be one of the worst ways to do that for us, because that's a 4-4 blocker immediately here, turn 3. Yeah, we just can't get in now because they crew the Chariot and block with a 4-4. So we play a Nax here and start setting up a really big Embercleave on an Nax, potentially. And nothing we set up here is going to lead to any attacks, so I think that's what we go for. Yeah, Chariot's a huge play for them there because it gives them a 4-4 blocker that turn so we don't hit in for any damage, and it gives them a way to produce a token every single turn to start trading into our creatures as we attempt to attack in. That's exactly the kind of card I'm worried about out of a green-white deck. Anything to produce tokens to just keep blocking our stuff. And that one happens to be on a 4-4 body as well. So here comes a Cultivate now for double green. You're just taking the turn to ramp into something big here and go for a Conclave Mentor. They are going to go ahead and attack with Chariot here, leave up 2 2/2s to block with. Yep, leave up 2 2/2 cats to block with. We don't have the mana to Embercleave here, we need a 4th land. So we can't attack in super well. If we put one more red symbol on the board, An axe attacks in fine, and I guess Bloodbraid Marauder does trade with a cat and spit out a satyr still. Lowers their creature count. We could even just shut off a cat with Earthshaker Kenra. So they could only chump block an axe, and we're hitting for 4, 5, 6. Doesn't seem super worth it. I could just like Young Pyro or something here, because Battlecry Goblin I'm not going to attack with this turn. Earthshaker Kenra doesn't feel awesome. It's like Earthshaker Kenra or Young Pyro. I think I just need to put one red symbol on the board and attack with an axe. I guess I could go Goblin Ruin Blaster because it's never going to kill one of their lands. And then I'm okay to attack him with that, I suppose. And because of an axe's ability, we know we're still going to have enough creatures to Embercleave next turn regardless. And they can't really afford to lose both cats, because if they do, they have no tokens to copy with Eska's Chariot unless they have an alternate token producer. So I don't think they can afford to double block an axe here. It'd be really rough if they did, if they just play like a Wrenn and 7 and go off. We're super out of it. But we're a really aggressive mono red deck, and our hand is just a bunch of little cheap creatures. Our only way to win this game is if we start pressuring them with damage as soon as possible, because they've ramped up a ton of mana here. We have to try to find some way to have Embercleave just sneak the victory in out of nowhere. Just be like, surprise, actually, I know you have a million things on board, but it turns out we win. I think that's our best shot. Oh god, yeah. Yeah. I'm super glad I went for that attack last turn, because, I mean, this is grim here. No possible way this game goes long in our favor. Yeah, we're already dead in one more attack. Well, we don't have the mana to do Embercleave if we put anything else on the board, so cross our fingers, hope to no blocks on an axe cleave for victory, but that is highly unlikely. Yep. Well, I'm gonna wait a second. Yeah, no victory here with an Embercleave. Just the exact kind of cards that we fear from green-white there. Eska's Chariot, I think, made 4 creatures total that game, if you count the Chariot itself, and then Tovolar's Huntmaster was 3 creatures in 1. Way too many blockers. Way too fast with the mana ramp to cast them to the Incubation Druid. Here we are now in round 8, the final boss, part 2, a very similar hand. Bunch of cheap creatures and an Embercleave. Super great stuff. This time we are on the play, which is very helpful. Potentially deadly. Play the Dragonkin Berserker first in case they play like a 1-3 or a 2-2 turn 2 that we want to shut off as a blocker. I guess only a 1-3 would matter, because a 2-2 they just wouldn't block with against a first striker. Looks like none of that, so we're still just going to play our haste creature here, just for the extra damage, but not shutting off any blockers, and next turn we get to go for an Embercleave. Turn after that, we get to go for a Dragon Token. There's a Midnight Clock, so they're just spending their early turn setting up. A ton of mana ramp here, but we're going to get a ton of damage in this turn, followed by an Obosh or a Dragon if we hit another mana next turn. Embercleave, our more expendable creature, for more damage. They're down to 6 now. And there's the concession, alright. 7-1 it is, a really fast final boss, round 2 there. But that was just mono red aggro on the play with the Embercleave in hand, an absolutely absurd card, really showing off its power level. So we'll take one final look at the deck. A really interesting draft overall, and I think it worked out swimmingly. I think our deck was absolutely absolutely absurd. Only lost that one game to the pretty great green-white deck that managed to ramp into a bunch of token blockers. But yeah, again, this isn't even the 10 out of 10 mono red deck. This is just a pretty solid mono red deck. Just when it comes together, when it's as open as it seemed in that draft, you can like even pivot it into it like we did and end up with a really solid 7-win, just mono red aggro deck. So wild stuff from the deck in general. Nothing much to say. No real standout cards that were like way better than I thought, or standout cards that were way worse than I thought. Magmatic Channeler was exceptionally slow in comparison to the rest of our deck. We were winning the game very, very quickly, as you saw in that last round. So we never really even had the time to try discarding cards to exile more cards. So Magmatic Channeler was probably the worst performing card that I drew consistently enough to have an opinion on. But that's about it. Even Dragon's Rage Channeler managed to become the 3/3 flyer that one time, but it was that one game where we already basically had won at that point. So really nice deck here. We'll check out what random rares we get for our prizes, see if we get some cool stuff. Certainly do some cute stuff for Azorius Historic Brawl shenanigans. But that is going to end today's video. If you're interested in some more drafts, stick around on the channel. There will be plenty more in the near future. Midweek Magic this week is Momir, so I'll be doing at least one of that. There's going to be Innistrad double feature at the end of the month, and Kamigawa Neon Dynasty at the start of February. Those are the two big draft formats that I'm excited about that are coming up soon, so we'll have plenty of those videos in the near future. As always, once again, I would like to thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.